The envelope from First Financial fell from my trembling hands, landing on the kitchen tile with a soft thud. The name printed on the loan statement matched mine, Alexandra Morgan, but the signature wasn't my looping cursive. It was a poor imitation, the handwriting distinctly familiar. "Son of a bitch," I whispered, reaching for my phone. My fingers hovered over my brother's contact information. Carter Morgan. My only sibling. The golden boy who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. The one who had apparently taken out a $42,000 loan in my name. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife could. We'd had our differences growing up, but this crossed a line I hadn't thought possible, even for him. I set my phone down without calling. This wasn't something to handle with a heated phone conversation. No, this required a more calculated approach. I picked up the statement, scanning it again. The loan had been taken out 3 months ago, right around the time Carter had turned his life around. New apartment, new car, new wardrobe, all the trappings of success after years of struggle. I'd been proud of him, happy that he'd finally found stability. What a fool I'd been. Outside, rain began to patter against the windows of my modest apartment. The apartment I'd worked so hard to afford while putting myself through law school. The apartment I might lose if this loan somehow became my responsibility. I poured myself a glass of wine, my mind already shifting into legal mode. As a junior associate at Harding and Wallace, I dealt with financial crimes on a daily basis. I just never expected to be the victim of one. A text notification lit up my phone. "Mom, dinner Sunday? Carter's bringing his new girlfriend. Dad's grilling steaks." I stared at the message, bile rising in my throat. My perfect brother, the family darling, bringing his new girlfriend to Sunday dinner, probably wearing clothes bought with my stolen credit. The image made my stomach turn. Instead of responding to my mother's text, I opened a different contact. "Me, Vivian, need your expertise. Financial fraud case. Personal. Can you meet tomorrow?" Vivian Russell was the firm's top forensic accountant, and one of the few people I truly trusted. She replied almost immediately. "Vivian, your office. 8 a.m. Bring everything you have." I took a long sip of wine, a plan beginning to form in my mind. Carter had always weaseled his way out of trouble, charming our parents, teachers, even the occasional police officer during his wilder days. He was counting on me doing the same, either not noticing the fraud or being too embarrassed to report my own brother. He'd miscalculated severely. I pulled out my laptop and began to compile every financial statement, credit report, and piece of mail I'd received in the past 6 months. By the time I finished, it was well past midnight, but I had a comprehensive picture of what my brother had done. The $42,000 loan was just the beginning. There were credit card applications, utility accounts, even a lease agreement for a storage unit, all in my name, all without my knowledge. I slept fitfully that night, dreams filled with betrayal and confrontation. When morning came, I dressed with particular care, choosing my sharpest charcoal suit and red blouse, my courtroom armor. Today might not involve a judge, but I was preparing for battle nonetheless. Vivian was waiting in my office when I arrived, 2 lattes on my desk and a focused expression on her face. "What are we looking at?" she asked without preamble. I handed her the folder I'd compiled. "Identity theft. Family style." She raised an eyebrow but didn't ask for details, already flipping through the documents with practiced efficiency. After several minutes, she looked up, her expression grave. "This is methodical, Alex. Not a one-time desperate move. The accounts are strategically spread out, the amounts calculated to stay just under fraud alert thresholds. She tapped the folder. Whoever did this knows how the system works. My brother, I said, the words like ash in my mouth. He works at First Financial. Loan officer. Understanding dawned on Vivian's face. Inside job. That complicates things. I know. She leaned forward. What do you want to do? Police report is standard procedure, but he's my brother, I finished. And my parents would never forgive me. Vivian shrugged. Your credit score, your call. We spent the next hour outlining my options. I could report him to the police, confront him privately, or approach the bank's fraud department directly. Each path had consequences: legal, familial, financial. There's another option, Vivian said finally, a glint in her eye that I recognized from her toughest cases. We set a trap. What kind of trap? One that gives him a chance to come clean, but ensures he faces consequences either way. She pulled out a blank piece of paper. Here's what we're going to do. By Friday afternoon, everything was in place. I'd contacted First Financial's fraud department anonymously, providing just enough information to trigger an internal investigation without naming Carter specifically. I'd also scheduled a meeting with the bank manager, ostensibly to discuss irregularities in my accounts. The final piece was the text I sent my brother that evening. Hey, can you meet me at your bank tomorrow? Need some financial advice. Thinking about a loan for home improvements. 10 a.m.? The reply came quickly. Carter, sure thing, sis. I'll block off some time. I can get you a great rate. I stared at his response, marveling at his audacity. Even now, with the net closing in, he was still playing the helpful brother. Still thinking he would get away with it. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. I drove to First Financial with a strange sense of calm. In my briefcase were copies of every fraudulent document, the forensic analysis Vivian had prepared, and a letter to my parents that I hoped I wouldn't have to send. Carter was waiting in the lobby, dressed in a crisp button-down and slacks, his sales smile firmly in place. He waved when he saw me, coming in for the hug we always shared. I stepped back, keeping it brief. Everything okay? He asked, a flicker of concern crossing his features. You seem tense. Just tired, I lied. Been a long week. Shall we go to your office? He nodded, leading me through the bank's gleaming interior. I noticed several employees watching us pass, their expressions carefully neutral. The fraud department had been discreet but thorough. Carter's office was small but well-appointed, with certificates on the wall and a family photo on his desk: Mom, Dad, him, and me at his college graduation. The sight of it made my chest tighten. So, he said, settling into his chair with practiced ease. Home improvements, huh? What are you thinking? Kitchen remodel? New bathroom? I placed my briefcase on his desk and clicked it open. Actually, I'm more interested in discussing the loan you took out in my name 3 months ago. And the credit cards. And the utilities. And the storage unit. All color drained from his face. Lex, I can explain. Save it, I cut him off, withdrawing the file Vivian had prepared. I already know everything. What I want to know is why. Why would you do this to me? He swallowed hard, his salesman's confidence evaporating. I was in trouble. Bad investments, some gambling. I needed a fresh start. I was going to pay it all back before you ever found out. With what money, Carter? The money from my fraudulent loans? I got a promotion, he said weakly. A raise. I'm turning things around, I swear. A knock at the door interrupted his excuses. The bank manager, Patricia Wells, stood in the doorway, her expression severe. Mr. Morgan, Ms. Morgan. I believe we need to have a conversation. Carter's eyes darted between us, realization dawning. Alex, what have you done? What have I done? I echoed incredulously. That's rich coming from you. Patricia cleared her throat. Perhaps we should continue this discussion in my office. Both of you. As we followed her down the hallway, I noticed security personnel positioned strategically near the exits. Carter noticed too, his shoulders slumping in defeat. This will ruin me, he whispered, his voice breaking. My career, my life. Alex, please. Mom and Dad should have raised you better, I finished, stepping into Patricia's office without looking back. The next hour passed in a blur of official statements, documentation reviews, and increasingly desperate pleas from my brother. Patricia explained that the bank had already frozen the fraudulent accounts and begun an internal investigation. Given the circumstances and Ms. Morgan's wishes, we're prepared to handle this internally rather than involving law enforcement immediately, Patricia explained. However, Mr. Morgan, your employment with First Financial is terminated, effective immediately. Carter nodded numbly. Furthermore, she continued, you will be required to repay all fraudulently obtained funds, plus fees and interest. Ms. Morgan will not be held responsible for any of these debts. I watched my brother's world collapse around him, feeling oddly detached. Part of me wanted to comfort him, to say we'd find a way through this together. But a stronger part remembered the violation, the calculated betrayal by someone I should have been able to trust implicitly. There's one more thing, I said, pulling out the final document from my briefcase, a contract Vivian had helped me draft. This is a repayment agreement. You will pay me back every cent, with interest, on a fixed schedule. You will also attend financial counseling and gambling addiction meetings. Carter stared at the paper, then at me. And if I refuse? Then I file a police report, and you face criminal charges for identity theft and fraud. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken emotions, his shame, my determination, our shared history hanging in the balance. Finally, he picked up the pen and signed. As we left the bank, Carter turned to me, his eyes red-rimmed. How am I going to tell Mom and Dad? I thought about the Sunday dinner we were supposed to attend tomorrow, the steak my father would grill, the new girlfriend Carter was supposed to bring. The perfect family tableau that had always excluded my reality. We'll tell them together, I said finally. But not before you've made the first repayment and attended at least 3 counseling sessions. I need to see that you're serious about changing. He nodded, a flicker of relief crossing his features. I'll fix this, Alex. I promise. I didn't respond. Promises from Carter Morgan had lost their value long ago. As I drove home, the weight of the morning's confrontation settled on my shoulders. I had protected myself financially, but the damage to our relationship, to our family, remained to be seen. Sunday dinner would be cancelled, explanations postponed, the facade of the perfect Morgan family temporarily suspended. My phone buzzed with a text from Vivian. How did it go? I thought about Carter's face when he realized I'd discovered his betrayal. The shock when he understood I wouldn't simply forgive and forget. The dawning comprehension that actions have consequences, even for the golden boy. He never saw it coming. I set the phone down and poured myself a glass of wine, the bitter satisfaction of justice tinged with the lingering taste of betrayal. Carter had made his choices. Now we would both live with the consequences. 2 weeks later, I received a payment notification from my bank. The first installment from Carter, right on schedule. It was accompanied by a text, a simple "thank you for not calling the police," and a screenshot of his financial counseling attendance record. It was a start. I didn't see my brother again until he'd completed his required counseling sessions. We met at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown, far from our parents' neighborhood and his former workplace. He looked different, thinner, older somehow, the cockiness replaced by a humbled wariness. "You look good," he said, the lie obvious to both of us. "You look like hell," I replied honestly. He attempted a smile. Turns out honest living is harder than I remembered. "Carter." "No, let me say this," he interrupted, his fingers fidgeting with his coffee cup. "I've had a lot of time to think about what I did. To you. To everyone who trusted me." He met my gaze directly for the first time. "It wasn't just the money, Alex. It was. I was jealous." "Jealous?" I repeated, genuinely surprised. "Of what?" "Of you. Your life. Your success." He shrugged, a gesture so familiar it made my chest ache. "You've always known exactly who you are, what you want. You worked for everything you have. I just took shortcuts. Pretended to be something I'm not." I stirred my coffee, watching the cream swirl into patterns. "You know what's ironic? I used to be jealous of you. Mom and Dad's favorite. The charming one. The one who never had to try so hard to fit in." A bitter laugh escaped him. "We're quite a pair, aren't we?" "Speaking of pairs," I said carefully, "Mom mentioned you were bringing a girlfriend to dinner that Sunday. Was that real, or?" "Melissa?" "She's real." A shadow crossed his face. "Was real. She left when she found out what happened. Said she couldn't be with someone she couldn't trust." The silence between us stretched, filled with all the things we still couldn't say. "Have you told Mom and Dad yet?" I finally asked. He shook his head. "I wanted to wait until I had something to show for myself. Some proof that I'm fixing things." "We should tell them soon," I said gently. "Together, like I promised." He nodded, relief and dread mingling in his expression. "Sunday dinner?" "Sunday dinner," I agreed. That night, I composed an email to Vivian, updating her on the situation. She had become more than a colleague through this ordeal, a confidant, a friend who understood the complexities of family dynamics and financial betrayal. "The repayment plan is holding," I wrote. "Counseling seems to be helping. We're telling our parents this weekend. Wish me luck." Her reply came within minutes. "He's lucky you gave him a second chance. Not everyone would have been so merciful. Remember, verify everything. Trust but verify. Trust but verify." It had become my mantra since discovering Carter's deception. I checked my credit report weekly, monitored every account, verified each payment he made against the agreement. It wasn't just about the money anymore, it was about rebuilding what had been broken between us. Sunday arrived with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I brought a bottle of my father's favorite whiskey, liquid courage for the conversation to come. Carter met me at their driveway, his car already parked at the curb. "Ready?" I asked. "No," he admitted. "But let's do it anyway." Our parents' home was exactly as it had always been, immaculately kept, family photos lining the hallway, the smell of my mother's roast filling the air. Mom greeted us with her usual enthusiastic hugs, Dad with his customary shoulder pat. Both my children at once, Mom beamed. What a treat. Carter, where's your girlfriend? I thought you were bringing her. Change of plans, he mumbled, avoiding her gaze. Dinner was a strained affair, with Mom filling the silence with neighborhood gossip and Dad discussing his golf game. Carter barely touched his food, while I mechanically worked through mine, rehearsing what we would say in my head. Finally, as Mom served dessert, Carter cleared his throat. Mom, Dad, there's something I need to tell you. Something we need to tell you. Mom's fork paused halfway to her mouth. We? What is this about? I reached over and squeezed Carter's arm, a silent support that seemed to give him strength. I've done something terrible, he began, his voice trembling. I stole Alex's identity. Took out loans, credit cards, all in her name. Without her knowledge. The clink of Dad's fork hitting his plate was the only sound in the stunned silence that followed. I was in financial trouble, Carter continued, the words tumbling out now. Gambling debts, bad investments. I was desperate. I thought I could fix it before anyone found out. Mom's face had gone pale. But you work at the bank. How could you? I used my position. I falsified documents. I knew how to work the system. He swallowed hard. I've been fired. And I'm lucky Alex didn't press charges. Dad's voice, when it came, was eerily quiet. How much? Over $40,000, I answered when Carter couldn't. Jesus Christ, Carter, Dad exploded, rising from his chair. Your own sister? Have we taught you nothing about family? About integrity? Mom was crying silently, her hands shaking. I don't understand. Why didn't you come to us if you were in trouble? Carter's shoulders slumped further. I didn't want to disappoint you. I was supposed to be the successful one, the one who had it all together. And now look where we are, Dad shouted. You could have gone to jail. He still could, I interjected quietly. If he doesn't stick to our agreement. All eyes turned to me. I explained the repayment plan, the counseling requirements, the conditions I'd set for not involving the police. Alex, sweetheart, Mom said, reaching for my hand. Why didn't you tell us when you found out? I met her gaze steadily. Because I wanted to give Carter a chance to tell you himself. To take responsibility. Dad's anger seemed to deflate, replaced by a profound weariness. He looked between us, his two children, now adults navigating a breach of trust none of us had anticipated. What happens now? He asked finally. Carter straightened slightly. I've got a new job. Nothing fancy, just sales at an electronics store. I've made 2 payments to Alex already. I'm attending counseling. Gamblers Anonymous. He paused. I'm trying to fix what I broke. Mom wiped her tears, her composure returning incrementally. We'll help you, of course. We can pay Alex back. No, I said firmly, surprising even myself. Carter needs to do this himself. He needs to understand the consequences of his actions. Dad nodded slowly, unexpected pride flickering in his eyes. Alex is right. This is Carter's responsibility. The rest of the evening passed in subdued conversation, questions answered, tears shed, tentative plans for moving forward. As I prepared to leave, Dad pulled me aside in the hallway. You've handled this with remarkable grace, he said quietly. I'm proud of you, kiddo. The words I'd waited so long to hear, coming now after this family crisis. I felt a lump form in my throat. Thanks, Dad. And Carter is lucky, luckier than he deserves, to have you as a sister. I thought about the complexity of sibling relationships, the tangled web of love, rivalry, and shared history. We're still family, I said simply. That has to count for something. Carter walked me to my car, the night air cool against our heated emotions. That went better than I expected, he admitted. Did it? I raised an eyebrow. Dad looked ready to disown you at one point. True. He scuffed his shoe against the driveway, a childhood gesture I hadn't seen in years. Alex, thank you. For being there. For not leaving me to face them alone. I studied my brother, the golden boy tarnished by his own choices, now humbled and genuinely contrite. Don't make me regret it, I said, opening my car door. Next payment is due on Friday. I know, he nodded. It'll be there. I promise. As I drove away, I watched him in my rearview mirror, still standing in our parents' driveway, looking oddly small against the house that had shaped us both. The coming months would be a test of his resolve, of my forgiveness, of our family's resilience. Trust, once broken, couldn't be repaired overnight. But we had made a start. 6 months later, I sat at my desk, reviewing the latest payment notification from Carter. Like clockwork, his installments arrived every 2 weeks, slowly chipping away at the debt. Vivian poked her head into my office, a knowing smile on her face. Another on-time payment? I nodded, returning her smile. He hasn't missed one yet. Color me impressed, she said, dropping into the chair across from me. Most family fraud cases don't end this neatly. We're not out of the woods yet, I reminded her. There's still a lot of money to repay. A lot of trust to rebuild. Still, she mused, it's progress. Progress. Such a simple word for the complex journey we'd undertaken. After the confrontation at our parents' house, Carter had thrown himself into his recovery, financial, emotional, ethical. The sales job at the electronics store had turned into an assistant manager position. The counseling sessions continued long after the required number was completed. The gambling had stopped entirely, as far as I could tell. And our relationship? It was evolving, shifting from the childhood dynamic of golden boy and striving sister to something more balanced. More honest. We met for coffee once a week, a ritual that had begun as a way to discuss payment schedules but had gradually transformed into genuine reconnection. I learned about his life, his struggles with comparison and self-worth, his journey to understand his addiction, his tentative steps toward building authentic relationships. He learned about mine, the pressures of my career, my own battles with imposter syndrome, my carefully guarded personal life that few people got to see. I got a call from First Financial yesterday, Carter said during one of these coffee meetings, his voice carefully neutral. I set down my cup. And? They've decided not to pursue additional penalties. The internal investigation is closed. He smiled faintly. Patricia, Ms. Wells, called personally to tell me. That's good news, I said cautiously. What about the regulatory reporting? Still on my record, he acknowledged. No escaping that. But it could have been much worse. I nodded, remembering the fear in his eyes that day in the bank. You got lucky. No, he corrected me, his gaze direct and unwavering. I got you. The simple statement hung between us, laden with meaning. In another life, I might have turned him in immediately. Might have let the legal system take its course without intervention. Might have walked away from the family that had often overlooked my needs in favor of his. But I hadn't. I'd chosen a different path, one that offered accountability without destruction, consequences without abandonment. Have you thought any more about what you want to do next? I asked, changing the subject. Career-wise, I mean. He hesitated, then reached into his bag and pulled out a brochure. Actually, I've been looking into this program. It's for financial counseling certification. Helping people who are in debt, dealing with credit issues, that kind of thing. I took the brochure, surprised and a little impressed. Using your experience to help others? Something like that, he admitted. I know what it's like to make terrible financial decisions. To feel trapped. Maybe I can help people avoid the mistakes I made. Or help them recover from the mistakes they've already made, I added thoughtfully. Exactly. His expression grew earnest. What do you think? Is it a crazy idea? I considered it, remembering the skilled manipulation he'd once used to navigate financial systems for his own benefit. Those same skills, redirected toward helping others, could be valuable. I think it's worth exploring, I said finally. But Carter, you'd be in a position of trust. Working with vulnerable people. I know, he nodded, understanding my unstated concern. That's why I want to do it right. Get properly certified. Maybe even talk to you about how to set up ethical boundaries. For the first time since discovering his betrayal, I felt a genuine spark of hope for my brother's future. Not just recovery, but growth. Transformation. I can help with that, I offered. And I know some people in the field who could give you insight. His face lit up with gratitude. Really? That would be amazing. We spent the rest of our coffee date discussing possibilities, restrictions, pathways forward. It felt like old times, when we would tackle projects together as kids, him with the bold ideas, me with the practical planning. As we parted ways, he hugged me, a real hug, not the perfunctory greeting we'd maintained through recent months. Thank you for not giving up on me, he said quietly. I hugged him back, allowing myself to feel the complicated love I had for my only sibling. Just don't make me regret it, I said, the familiar warning softened by genuine affection. That night, I updated my calendar with Carter's next payment date, a ritual that had become less about verification and more about tracking progress. The debt was still substantial, but the regular payments represented something beyond money, a commitment to repair, to rebuild, to redeem. My phone rang, my mother's number flashing on the screen. Alex, dear, she greeted me, her voice warm. Your father and I were wondering if you'd come to dinner this Sunday. Carter mentioned he has some news he wants to share. I smiled, already knowing what the news would be. I'll be there, Mom. Wonderful. And Alex, thank you. For what? I asked, genuinely puzzled. For giving your brother a second chance. For handling this whole situation with such grace. I thought about the day I discovered the fraudulent loan, the rage and hurt that had threatened to consume me. The calculated plan I'd set in motion, determined to see justice served. He's still paying for what he did, I reminded her gently. Yes, she agreed. But he's also healing. We all are. After we hung up, I stood at my apartment window, watching the city lights blink on as dusk settled. So much had changed in the months since I'd confronted Carter at the bank. My fury had gradually ebbed, replaced by a cautious optimism for what our relationship could become. Trust but verify. It remained my mantra, a necessary protection against further betrayal. But alongside it had grown something new, a willingness to witness change, to acknowledge growth, to believe in the possibility of redemption. Sunday dinner would be different this time. No painful revelations, no shattered illusions. Instead, a family slowly knitting itself back together, scarred but healing. Carter would share his plans for the financial counseling program. Dad would express cautious support. Mom would worry about the regulatory record's impact on his future. And I would sit among them, no longer the overlooked sister or the vengeful victim, but simply Alexandra Morgan, the woman who had refused to be defined by her brother's betrayal. Who had found a way to demand justice without sacrificing compassion. Who had, in the end, given the most precious gift she could offer: the chance to make things right.